so much for this introduction. And yes, indeed, we are in for the next 30 minutes discussing and diving into these topics because, believe it or not, but in a year when half of humanity has been called to the polls, yes, 2024 reminds us that at a digital era, tech and politics are definitely the two faces of the same coin. Responsible AI deployment, digital infrastructure development, cyber resilience, we'll name them. Every continent must take on those challenges if it wants to have a seat at the table, which is turning into an unfriendly dinner for two. Now, Europe and Africa wants to make a difference. Well, that's good. And believe it or not, it's not always by playing the regulation card. Let's put our global leadership plans with our next guest, Dr. Margaret Nyambura Ndung'u. You're definitely the Cabinet Secretary at the Ministry of Information, Communications and Digital Economy of Kenya. And Cecilia Bonefeld Dahl, you're Director General at DigitalEurope. You're actually giving a voice to 45,000 digital companies in Europe. So if you are ready, we're going to dive in right here, right now. And first, maybe with you, Cecilia, because I was just stating the fact that maybe sometimes we don't really need to play the regulation card, but Europe has been rather in the hot seat for being a champion for regulation rather than being innovation or business-centric. Even Mario Draghi, in his last report about European competitiveness, put it this way: invest or innovate or perish, basically. So, can Europe change the narrative here? Can we actually try to make a difference when it comes to better innovating than regulating?
Well, I don't think we have a chance, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that Mario Draghi highlighted was that 20 years ago, we were more or less at the same GDP growth as the US. The gap has widened with 30% since. We are right now lacking every year 800 billion in investment capital compared to the US. What happened? I mean, if you look 20 years ago, what happened was that there was a major consolidation phase of both tech companies, defense companies, everywhere else than in Europe.
Yeah.
We stayed the same. We talked about sovereignty in small teeny-weeny units of countries. We did procurement in small units of countries. We did implementation of endless amount of rules and regulations, country by country. And we really saw a depopulation of tech companies in Europe. If we look right now, I think on the top 100 companies in Europe, in the world, Europe has 4. On the tech scene, we have around 10, and many of them are not their biggest market is not Europe anymore. It's the US at best, I would say. So we are really squeezed in this situation where security. I mean, honestly, technology has always defined security, whether that has been from the steam engine to the fuel engine, or whether that has been from the horse to the car or whatever. I mean, the technology has always driven growth and prosperity and security in society. And somehow along the line, we decided that we wanted to regulate everything that might happen in the whole wide world with these technologies, instead of really thinking about that. In that period, we've had technology innovation moving from typically the military, public sector, research and development into private sector. And if you if you bring down the price level by law, and you refuse to have companies merge, even though it's a very mature market, then you lack this kind of consolidation phase that creates the next investment and innovation wave. And that's basically what Europe did. We got stuck in the centuries behind of countries by country doing things by country. So on top of that, lacking those. I mean, if we had followed the curve of the US, we would have had in taxpayers' money around 300 billion more per year. But instead, we have added a burden of 200 billion in compliance costs for companies. And we just did a survey with all our companies, and I can tell you that 60% says that their burden of compliance have increased more than 20% in the last 2 years. And that is without all the existing regulation of the last commission basically being rolled out. So can we change? Yes. I mean, I think we have now seen that we have a president. I'm a big fan. She is knowledgeable. She knows what she's doing. She knows the European leaders. She's a liberal. We have a digital or technology commissioner who is Finnish, who knows that security and technology is very linked, and also has security as one of her main aim. And for the first time in history, we have a commissioner that actually has defense in his title. Also a Lithuanian gentleman that knows that security and technology goes hand in hand. And I think we can say with Ukraine and everything that we have learned, and God forbid that we don't learn from that and we don't support them, I really hope that we'll continue, and it looks like Europe is really on that path. But with them, we have really learned that the future of warfare will basically be centered around technology innovation cycles.
Let me follow up on that one, because we're going to have an entire panel dedicated to defense tech at the very beginning of the afternoon. But what you're saying out here is that we're probably more ready to actually create together the defense tech of Europe more than European defense itself.
Yes, I think we are. I think we're more ready in history than we have been in the last many, many decades. Will that mean that we can execute? Are we agile enough to think about pan-European procurement, incentive structures across Europe? I mean, we have the saying, we need to do three things. We need to cut regulation, we need to simplify the single market, and we need to start incentivizing. So less stick, more carrot. And are we basically able to do that instead of, putting endless amount of research into technologies that are created maybe in China or somewhere else? But, for the sake of not picking the winners, maybe we need to look at the winners. I mean, if we look at critical technologies, which are defined in the US, in Europe, and in China, these are the fundamental technologies that defines economic and military stability in society. Europe leads in one, which is connectivity. They're like second in green and energy tech. We have a lot of innovations in the biotech areas. So I think that's exactly where US and Europe are meeting each other in spite of, protectionist measures on being more centered at the home market. I think that is where we are basically meeting each other in the fight between autocracy and democracy. That winning that game of critical technology and critical infrastructure protection, where we will see, and already are seeing, a huge amount of attacks, will really be the center of the alliance of like-minded nations. How can we protect our critical infrastructure, and how can we build winning technology companies together across the alliance that can basically keep us safe for the future?
This is probably also a question of resilience, but we'll get to that in a few seconds. Let me turn the mic to you, Margaret, actually, because yes, Africa has undoubtedly a growing influence in the global digital governance and technology innovation. How would you describe it? What is the African touch when it comes to digital?
Thank you, Marjorie. And yes, Africa, we are forecast to be the digital space going forward. Coupled, we have 60% of our populations. They are young, below the age of 30. They are very agile, they are very talented. They are tech savvy and ready to be engaged in the digital space. Our focus with the right investments in education, in technology, in entrepreneurship, then we are looking at a population where we will use the digital space to come up with digital solutions for our socio-economic challenges. And this is not just limited to the continent, not just services for Africans. With the right collaborations, partnerships with the global communities, again, we are looking at exporting these digital talents, these digital solutions to solve global challenges. And with that, we are talking of co-creating these solutions. And dealing with the current challenges we have across the continent of jobs. Our young populations, they do not have the right jobs. But then we are saying the digital space is the right space for us, that we'll be able to balance that equation and ensure that we have our people working right from home, but solving digital challenges. And to do this, the focus, and I'll give the case of Kenya, we are focused on infrastructure development. And in so doing, we are doing this infrastructure both in urban and in rural areas. We are doing the last mile connectivity. And again, here we are doing in partnership, private sector, academia. We want the best solutions. We want the best ideas to ensure that once we have this connectivity, then we have the digital services in space. And as a government, we are digitizing our services to ensure that access is up to the rural areas, is up to that woman who is in a community, who has no skills, and the like. And the next thing we are doing is capacity building and awareness creation. Because we are saying, if we are to compete in this digital space, then we must have the right infrastructure, must have the right digital services, but then our capacity must be right. We must be confident in the digital space. We must be able to navigate without the fear of losing your identity or misinformation, and that can only be done if we are doing the right capacity building. Cyber hygiene is another key area we are focused on because of our young generations that we are saying we are computerizing, we are creating this digital superhighway. But how do we ensure that we keep our values, we keep our national interest? We can only do this by ensuring that our young mothers, our marginalized communities, they are in this digital space in a very informed way, and they are able to channel the right values to our young generations. So with all that, then we are going to have a collaborative, inclusive, safe digital future that everybody has a space to play, everybody can confidently be in that space and productively make use of it and provide the jobs for the global world.
Absolutely, which is definitely the reason why, I mean, so many different Chinese and American companies want to benefit from it, especially in Africa. So how can you actually make the most of it and make sure that you can, just dive in or build on African tech and African innovations, making a difference for your own, and not just always being, this bait for Chinese and American or foreign companies?
Thanks for the question. First of all, again, giving the case of Kenya, and I know it is happening across the continent, we have a national digital transformation strategy, and this strategy is contextualized to our needs. That it was developed in a multi-stakeholder approach where we look at what we need, what is of interest to us as a country, what is strategic for us, what partnerships should we go for that meets our needs. So with that, then when it comes to innovation, we are very open to innovation when it comes to emerging technologies. But again, creativity is key. We would want to ensure we are accountable and therefore regulation, and that is flexible regulations, that is adaptive, that the focus is to ensure we are creating an enabling environment, but then we must be accountable. I think from the previous presentations, we have seen the disinformation, misinformation. That is something that we must be able to ensure we counteract. We are able to ensure everybody is in the digital space doing what is of interest to the country. Our constitution, again, is very clear that we protect the freedoms, but at the same time, we have to be accountable. So basically, we create this enabling space. When it comes to partnering with tech companies, our local innovators, we encourage them. We ensure that the collaboration, the partnership we are creating ensures that there is sustainability. And this can only be done if there is a strategic partnership with these foreign or companies that are outside our ecosystem to ensure we are learning, yes, from the best, but at the same time, sustainability is there, and we are creating jobs, because again, I repeat, that is a critical challenge we are having, to ensure that the solutions we are coming up with are able to address our job gaps, and not just entry jobs, deep tech. And again, when it comes to education, we are partnering to ensure that the kind of courses we are creating, they are focused towards making us creators of knowledge, creators of content, and creators of solutions.
Which is really interesting, because, I mean, while leapfrogging either on technology itself or regulation or creating this digital ecosystem, you are definitely preventing yourself from every single nuance and layers we had to go through, or any step in the process we had to go through as a European, and especially when it comes to tech sovereignty. So I know it's been like this huge word that has, been described and defined by so many and in so many ways. But still, I mean, if we are just basing our entire strategy on digital sovereignty and make it a matter of strategic autonomy for the continent and for governments and state members, of course, in the European Union. How or what concrete steps should the new Commission take to close the gap with global leaders in critical technologies? How can we actually state the fact that, yes, digital sovereignty is European, and in the meantime, not rely on regulation so much?
I'm not sure it is.
Yeah.
So, digital sovereignty, I just said before that digital capabilities to 99% of the capabilities come from private sector. Private sector companies are typically global. What I do think is that there is a NATO alliance and a NATO plus alliance. Let's hope that Ukraine and others join soon in a like-minded, beyond that, that could also be G7 scope. But I do think there is some technologies within an alliance that you need to be self-reliant on. And then there are some physical boundaries that, should you be in a crisis situation, you need to get certain raw material or certain technologies. For example, just let's take the energy grid, right? If you have an energy grid going down, you need decentralized energy grids. If you need connectivity, you need much more safe connectivity, which means that there are some advantages by making it on the continent or within smaller units. But I think we need to revert that sovereignty measure. Digital or technology sovereignty for me is, are you able to protect your citizens by use of technology? Are you able to protect your critical infrastructures to make the society function? And then you should ask yourself, who are my friends that can help me to make that happen? And in crisis situations, what are the real threats? Not like imaginary threats of being like totally autonomy or whatever, right? But with the real threats that I need to address, and who can help me with that in the near by environment if that is needed. So I think we need to think totally different on sovereignty that we have done before. I don't believe in national sovereignty anymore in the sense that everybody needs to have their own little thing. If you look at Europe, there is no defense in Europe that can stand the boundaries alone, right? So, and that's even more truth in digital. We just had Sandra Joyce telling us just before how, cyber threat. If you look at the future of warfare, I feel that I'm like scaring people, but it's going to be attacks on critical infrastructure, right? And they're not going to care which country it's in. Oh, yeah. So no country can solve this by themselves. And the capabilities that we need to solve that, whether that is drones or drone jamming or AI to detect malware, or whether it's a decentralized energy grids, and I could continue, warning system for floodings. We couldn't even get that right. We could have invested money in that, right? And we could have kept the citizens safe for natural disasters. These are the type of things we should be looking at. And then we should ask ourselves, who are our like-minded friends to solve that problem? And who has the capability, and where do we need to build more capability within Europe? And there are certainly areas within Europe where we need to build much more capabilities in Europe, but not as a response to saying we want to be on our own, but as a response to be more resilient and taking better care of our citizens. And just one comment, I think, for Africa, the last question was very central in the sense that Africa is going through the same right now, growing up and finding out where do we need to be more resilient, who are our friends, how can we... And one thing is for sure, if we look at Ukraine, one of the reasons why they have been so resilient is that they had the digital skills, advanced digital skills. For the Nordics, they have been our coding factory for all the companies. Everybody has had people working in Ukraine with us. And right now, these digital savvies are moving into cybersecurity, to drone technologies, to AI development. And their innovation cycles are down to 4 to 6 weeks. So within 4 to 6 weeks, anything has been copied by the Russians. So for example, procurement processes. If you have, NATO procurement processes that takes 8 years, or endless amount of bureaucracy to come to buying critical technologies and agile, it just doesn't work. Yep. It just needs to be changed. And all these learnings is something that I think Europe has to untangle itself from. NATO needs to untangle itself from. But Africa stands a chance to basically say, maybe we shouldn't have a procurement process that takes that long for emerging technologies. Maybe we need to change this already now in our digital development, and rightfully so.
Well, sometimes it might be coming as an epiphany that tech has no border.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there we go. Margaret, actually, I want to...
And neither security.
Absolutely. I want to follow up with you on this concept or idea of digital sovereignty. What does it mean to Africa? And again, you have the great luck and opportunity to be building this entire ecosystem from scratch and just, avoiding yourself the pain of going through, again, this multiple layers and steps that we had to go through. So digital sovereignty when it comes to Africa, would it be more about, relying on private-public partnerships and global initiatives to make it happen?
Yes, I fully agree with you, Cecilia, that when it comes to issues of procurement, they are cross-cutting. You cannot say at the national level. For us, digital sovereignty is about ensuring that the solutions we are coming up with, the products we are purchasing, whatever initiative we are coming up with, they are contextualized to address our challenges, to address our needs. Partnership, may it be with local organization, may it be with the organization from outside the country. That partnership must be tailored to enhance our needs, so that from the word go, whatever collaborations we are coming up with, we have our country interest, our national interest at heart. And yes, the procurement processes, you have said they have been taking a long time. With emerging technologies, then we have to be very agile. And again, that is where PPP, public-private partnerships, comes in. And when we look at the projects we are implementing in Kenya, that is the approach we have adopted. When it comes to broadband connectivity, we are working with the private sector to ensure that we complement each other. We have this ambitious project of connecting 100,000 kilometers in the next 10 years. And in so doing, then the public sector has a role, the private sector has a role. When it comes to education again, we are partnering with the private sector to ensure that we are doing both traditional training curriculum, but then we are also doing online. And the government is there to create an enabling environment and allow the private sector to innovate and come up with the solutions that, again, address our needs. Again, when it comes to public-private partnership, we extend to academia, we extend to the civil society, with the recognition that it is a whole collaborative approach for us to ensure that we are addressing issues of cybersecurity, issues of adaptive or generative artificial intelligence that, again, is designed in an ethical way, that we are talking about cybersecurity by design, that, again, it is not something we are thinking after we have implemented our systems. So basically, to ensure that we have a robust, resilient digital ecosystem, that we are able to put all our digital services, we are able to put all our education system, we are able to put our health system, then collaboration is key. The public-private partnership is key. And this collaboration is not just within the border, it is outside the border as well, considering that cybersecurity, again, the threats are not necessarily from within. Most of the time you'll find they are from without. So basically, as a country, as a continent, that's the approach we take. When we look at the continental level, we have the African Union Commission that is creating guidelines, framework on cybersecurity, on artificial intelligence, on digital data framework. So again, we align to that to ensure that once we go global cloud policy, again, once we store our data in whichever part we put, we are able to ensure we are able to extend this. Harmonization of these policies, regulations, again, is key in the cognition that we have 54 countries at different levels of development, different levels of adoption of technologies. So contextualizing at that level, but ensuring that going forward, we are coming up with policies, regulations, infrastructure that can have interoperability, again, as a guiding principle.
Just to sum it up, in the 1 minute we have left on this stage, because time flies by at the Tallinn Digital Summit, how would you define this global leadership when it comes to digital?
The global leadership is held by the one that has the best technologies and has the ability to develop, adopt, test and adopt digital technologies at the speed faster than anybody else. And I think that will also be the definition of digital sovereignty in the future.
So not moving fast and breaking things, but being agile and resilient.
Not necessarily breaking things, but I would say develop, test, adopt faster than any other place or by your challengers, and you'll be the most digital sovereign nation, continent, or.
And as we're following the white rabbit apparently today, what would be, Margaret, your definition of global leadership?
Global leadership is being agile, being adaptive, being able to learn and share knowledge, being able to recognize that lived experiences will be the best to be able to contextualize the future solutions.
Thank you so much. Thanks to the both of you. I guess they deserve some applause, unusual applause actually.